Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. We are heading down to my, virtual second home, New York City, once again. We're going to be speaking with an award-winning director, choreographer, teacher. He founded the he's artistic director of Live and In Color Theater Company and directed and choreographed. And when I found this out, I was so happy. One of my favorite musicals to listen to. And one day I hope to see on stage, and I'm not going to say what it is yet. I'm going to let you think.
Okay.
Now, I'd like to welcome to the show, Dev Janki. Dev, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
No problem. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. So I start my interviews always the same way because I want to know who you are. Who is Dev in 30 seconds? Give us the 30-second bio of Dev.
The 30-second bio. I am originally from Canada. Born in London, Ontario, grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, grew up all over the world. I visited pretty much every continent in the world by the time I was 10 years old, moved to New York City at 18 years old to pursue a career in acting, and worked on Broadway for like 10 years, and then transitioned into being a director, choreographer, producer, teacher, and that's sort of what I've been doing. I've had a very eclectic career in pretty much every aspect of the theater and the arts, starting out as a voice soprano in the opera and a professional ballet dancer in Canada, and then moving into theater. And so I feel like I've lived a full life in the arts.
And you got a lot more to go, right? There's so much. Act 2 still has to come.
Yes.
So let's take it back before you get to New York and all that other stuff. Were you always into musical theater growing up, or is that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
Yes, I discovered it as a young person, but what led me there was, as I said, starting out in the opera. My dad sang with the Edmonton Opera Company and sang with the chorus and was on the board there and got me involved at a young age. So my first foray into anything musical was classical music. Then I became a professional ballet dancer, and then I happened to see West Side Story, the film, and I was like, oh, you can do it all. It all goes together. And there are people of color that look like me on screen. So there was a whole awakening. And then that, the floodgates opened and there was no turning back.
So musical theater was inevitable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, I think I loved and still do love all aspects of the arts. And for me, it's the perfect synthesis, when it's done well, of everything coming together. Yeah. Which is so magical.
So you as a kid, you were watching theater, you were obviously starting to do theater. And then, let's just jump to 18 in New York, right? What was the impetus to do that?
Well, I had, as I said, I had been doing theater for forever. I was dancing professionally. I was doing a lot of theater in Canada in high school, and I actually had my first ballet teacher and one of my mentors were from New York and lived in Edmonton. And every year they would go to New York for Christmas and bring back the cast albums and the playbills and the souvenir programs that I would be so jealous and read them cover to cover. And they were actually they were such mentors to me growing up. And they actually handed me a brochure for the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, AMDA, which is what I auditioned for and got into and moved to New York at 18. It was sort of, I didn't want to go to a full college program because I had already been trained and I was sort of ready to jump into the field. So it was a 2-year program that was sort of perfect for me at the time and was the perfect transition into the professional world for me. But yeah, I did move to New York, Canadian boy, did not know a soul in New York City, but it was following my dreams.
Well, you were from the New York City of Alberta, obviously. So.
Exactly. Well, what's so funny is actually Edmonton, when I was growing up there in the 80s, it was the previous oil boom, right? And there was so much money being thrown into the arts. So I was so fortunate growing up there to be surrounded by theater and the Fringe first starting and all the ballet companies and dance companies. So I feel like I got a great education being up there.
Nice. So now you're 18 in New York. You know nobody. You're going to a new school. Uh, what was your first reaction to being down there and being a part of this? Because now you can walk down Broadway, look at all the marquees, and go, "That's what I want to do." What was that first experience like?
Well, I had definitely visited New York as a
Hmm.
kid, just on and had seen some Broadway shows previous to that, so I was somewhat familiar with it. But I do remember my first day in New York. Um, Student housing was in what's known as the Beacon Hotel now, which is now a very sort of
Okay.
prestigious hotel. At the time, it wasn't. It was like
Yeah.
a very rundown uh, 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 housing situation. And I remember that first night. People put the fear of God in me about New York, and it was 7 o'clock at night, and I was too scared to walk a block to get food. I thought I'd get mugged. But I quickly got very, very comfortable with being there. I I don't know. It just always felt like home to me. Like it really. I still am. I love traveling the world. I love going places, but New York really feels like home. I feel like, especially for what I do in the arts, it's the place to be. I was surrounded by, um, all the people I wanted to be inspired by.
Yeah.
I could go to see anything, any ballet, theater. You know, it was all there.
For sure. So you went to AMDA and then you graduated. Now you have the world. What was the first thing you did when you graduated, and what was the first show you got or audition?
Well, you're not supposed to in school, but I actually was auditioning the minute I got there. I started going to open calls.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll never forget my first audition. One of my very first auditions was for Jerome Robbins' Broadway, which was
Oh, wow.
a big, and I'll never forget, 18 years old, at 890 Broadway, 300 guys for this dance call. And they were all like, it was the days where you could still smoke. So everyone was smoking in the hallways. And I remember I just did it as a fluke, thinking, oh, this would be a cool thing to go to a New York audition. And
Yeah.
then I made the first cut and I made the second cut. And then they kept me all day. Like they like, and it was sort of mind boggling to me being in New York that, oh, maybe I am talented. Maybe there is possibility. I never got. What was crazy, for the next 2 years when the show was running, they called me in once a month to audition and did the same thing. I never got the show, but I got to audition for Jerome Robbins. So that was, I was always down to me and someone else. But in
At
any
that
event,
point,
I was still in school, and I wouldn't be let out of school. But it was a great experience.
so at that point, when it's always just down to you and somebody else, do they reconize you as the same? Is it the same people audition you every time?
Oh yeah,
Every month?
yeah. They know you very well. They knew who I was. So.
I don't know if that's better or worse after a while. You're like,
Well, it's the strange thing about the business. It's all about relationships. So especially for this young kid, like they don't know who I am. They know how young I am. They know how inexperienced I am. But I think the good casting directors, the good creators keep an eye on you and nurture you. And I definitely felt that in terms of, I was way too young to be doing that. Do you know what I mean? They knew I was talented, but I don't think I would ever get cast just because I was not experienced enough yet.
nice.
Um,
So let's move on. That first casting, that first show that you did get on Broadway.
was a little show called Cats.
Oh, never heard. Explain it to us.
um, I actually saw, the first time I saw it was in Toronto, the first Canadian
Oh
production.
yeah, I saw that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it again for me seemed like the perfect synthesis of singing and dancing and acting, and just it was that was my dream to do that show.
Yeah.
I auditioned for that show like 10 times before I got it. I uh, I was when I first moved there, I also supported myself by being a singing waiter on a cruise ship. So I was sort of the cliche New York waiter. But I auditioned for it like 10 times, similar to Jerome Robbins' Broadway, always getting kept to the end,
Wow.
but always like being on a short list. And then randomly one day I was on my way to a shift and I got a voice of what is it called? answering service message.
Yeah.
The days of answering services. And I went to the payphone and they basically said, can you start tomorrow? We have an immediate replacement. Will you come in? And yeah, so I showed up at the stage door the next day and had to learn the show in 2 weeks and then was thrown on stage. So
wow. That's crazy.
And I ended up doing the show for 3 years. You know, people make fun of cats and rag on cats all the time. But I have to say, to this day, it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. It really is so physically demanding. The 8 shows a week, crawling around like a cat, putting on that makeup on a rake stage, contorting your body, singing at the top of your lungs for 2.5 hours. It's a very unique show in the fact that, like, most musicals, people come on and off stage and you dance and then go off. Cats, the entire company is on stage the entire 2.5 hours. You never get a break. Wow. So it's brutal, and people don't really realize how tough it is.
How long did it take you to put that fur and costume on? And then how long does it take you to get off? Because at the end, you can come in at any point to start, lazily getting dressed, but at the end, you're tired, you're done. So how long was the process of in and out of that costume?
Well, that everyone asks that. At first, when I got there, it took like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get ready with warming up, getting the makeup on, and then afterwards, probably like getting out of it was much easier because you just jump in the shower and everything comes off.
It's true.
But obviously you learn to do it quicker, and you learn sort of when you have to. I think I was stuck on the subway and I got there like really, really late, like just past half hour, and realized I could do my makeup in 15 minutes if needed. Very good job, but there was a lot of preparation. I think it was more the preparation was more warming up and getting yourself ready, because it was just such a hard show, and you would just get injured all the time if you didn't do that. And I got injured all the time.
Wow, that's crazy. So you were with Cats for 3 years. What happened next? Did you? How does that work? Did you just decide I'm done with Cats, or
I was auditioning, as you do, for all sorts of different shows. You know what I mean? Because I thought I didn't want to be. I loved it, but I didn't want to do that forever. I had other goals and ambitions, so I was always auditioning for the latest Broadway show or whatever was coming up during my days. And I ended up getting Miss Saigon on tour again before I moved back to Broadway. And Miss Saigon was another show that I auditioned for multiple times before I got it. And I ended up going on tour with that and coming back quickly to the new Broadway company. So from then on, it was just sort of moving from show to show to show. I was really lucky. I feel like I sort of hit the jackpot, because I really did work pretty steadily on Broadway for 10 years straight.
Wow, nice.
Which is, in our business, is unheard of, and even more so for a person of color in this business. At that time, it was such a. I feel very lucky that was the case, because there were so few opportunities.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on that. You've just set the bar really high for anybody listening, going, keep trying, and you'll end up for 10 years on Broadway.
Well, it was a lot. I mean, it's the thing about New York. You do have to, or the business in general, you have to persevere. You have to keep trying, and you have to keep going back. I think that I knew it's what I wanted to do, and I went to every open call. I went to every audition. I had a lot of no's, a lot of people saying no. I didn't have an agent. No agents would touch me when I moved to New York, because being a person of color, they said there was no, they didn't know what to do with me. So I sort of went after it myself, which I think is still the case if you're anyone in this business. You have to be sort of self-motivated.
For sure. So at what point did you start transitioning into directing choreography, or you kind of dabbling in that all along?
I think I have always been dabbling in it since I was a kid. Like, I feel like I was always the one to produce shows and direct them and sort of help create them. But I moved to New York right at the height of the AIDS epidemic, and Broadway Cares Equity Fight Stage popped up, and it was sort of the group that was doing something. So the theater community was so hard hit. So many people died, so many colleagues and friends of mine passed away. So we sort of, Broadway Cares started producing these sort of big, high profile benefits. The Easter Bonnet Competition, the Broadway Bears, Gypsy of the Year, now called the Red Bucket Follies. And I started volunteering as a dancer performer in them, but also then started assisting and choreographing them. And I sort of got my feet wet working with Broadway performers on a Broadway stage with Broadway costume designers. Like I was sort of, again, thrown into the deep end of the pool. I assisted Jerry Mitchell for like 9 years on Broadway Bears. I was sort of always sort of involved. So I really credit Broadway Cares and Tom Biello and Michael Graziani, who are the heads then of sort of trusting me with putting together these high profile things. And I realized that, I love doing this and I think I'm good at it. And I actually get more satisfaction out of it. So I started from then actually getting paid. That was all voluntary stuff, but then I actually started getting paid for different jobs, smaller jobs. And when I realized that there were opportunities, I decided to literally just, I'm done. And and it's strange how the universe works. I think for years, I wanted to be on Broadway, I wanted to perform, and years of like auditioning and getting to meet people, and people knew my work. Literally when I gave my note, I was in Miss Saigon again, back in Miss Saigon at the time when I gave my notice and I was gonna quit performing. Literally in that 6 weeks before I left, I got like 3 Broadway job offers to perform without auditioning, just like saying, are you sure you wanna leave? Are you sure? But it was the right decision.
So what was that first show? Once you made that decision to take up the mantle?
I can't remember. I mean, there were so many little things going on. Like I did a lot of little regional things, and but the first big one out the door was, I think, the one you're referencing, is a little musical that played off Broadway called Zanna Don't. That I and funny, all roads lead back to Cats. One of my castmates' partners had started producing, and he knew I was directing and choreographing. He ran into me at step class in the days when you still did step class, and he said, hey, I'm doing this musical that comes out of the Yale Cabaret. It's about a magical gay matchmaker in an upside down world. Would you come do the first reading as an actor in it? And so I was Mike in the very first reading, and then I ended up taking over as the director for the first reading, and then I was with it through all the way when it opened off Broadway. And that was a crazy, exciting, hard, eye-opening journey. It was sort of my first foray into creating a show from the ground up. Mm-hmm. I think I didn't realize. I mean, the first time I was involved from the other end was I was in a show called Sideshow on Broadway. I was in the original company of that, and that was something as an actor that I had been in from the first reading all the way to its Broadway opening and Broadway closing. It's the first time I got to see all the pieces coming together, so that was a huge education for me. So Zanna Don't was the first time I was in charge and got to like figure out how it goes together.
When I've listened, I wish I'd seen it at some point somewhere. I wish somebody would put it on, but I listened to the cast recording. It is by far one of my favorites to listen to. Just every song,
album, right?
It is so good, and I wish more people knew about it, because it is just, it makes me laugh. It's poignant. It's just so good. So whatever you did, whatever touches you did to it, thank you. Thank you so much for putting your.
No, I was super proud of the show. It was, it was such a joyous experience, and sort of, I think, ahead of its time. And it's become sort of a cult favorite. And actually, recently, what's so funny is I actually have my own talk show, a happy hour every week that I host. That's called Be Our Guest as well. But recently, I had the entire original cast of Zanna don't on. So.
Oh, that would have been awesome. I knew there was some kind of connection. You were doing some good stuff, and we have the same name of the shows. So now let's talk about your theater company that you co-founded, Live and in Color. Tell us a little bit when that happened and the impetus for starting that.
Well, that's sort of been, came out of a lifetime in this business. Do you know what I mean? I think I had, I think there have been many frustrations I've had with being a person of color, all my colleagues of color or underrepresented communities in the business, and seeing how talented they were, and the needle not shifting quick enough or far enough for me. And so I, as I sort of realized I was more in a position of power and had these connections, I was like, I need to do something. So it really came out of the impetus to, as I, is I wanted to show off my talented friends to the world. Like, there are so many talented people I know who just people don't know about. And so at the time, I have a space up in Connecticut, a very unique sort of rustic place in the woods that can house like 30 people. And I've been bringing artist friends up there for years. Actually, I started bringing my Broadway colleagues up there after 9/11. 9/11 happened and Broadway shut down and everyone was freaking out in the city. And I said, you know what, let's get out of the city. I threw a bunch of my castmates in a car and we went up there and hung out. And it sort of became a tradition every year. And I realized in an environment like that, when you get creative people together, stuff happens. So over the years, concerts were happening, cabarets were happening, just sort of organically. Plays were written. So that was in the back of my mind. So I was like, how do I turn this into something that's actually a company that actually does work? And I had no idea how to start a company. How I was like, I'm the artistic guy, and I had a young assistant on a production of Funny Girl I was directing out in Michigan, who was just graduating from college, who moved to New York. Dennis Corsi is his name. He's now our new works person, and I was telling him the idea, and young and scrappy, he was like, "Oh, that sounds great. I can write your business plan." And 5 months later, we'd raised 50 grand and had our first season. So that was 6 years ago, and it's grown and really developed into something really, really cool. We're based both in New York and Connecticut. Our mission is to develop new plays and musicals that celebrate diversity. We have open submissions across the country, across the world, for people to submit, and we select pieces that we want to springboard to full productions. Mm-hmm. So we take the shows and we do pretty much full workshops with professional Broadway actors and musicians, but do it sort of in a bare bones way. And the focus being lifting up stories and people that stories we haven't heard and faces and we haven't seen.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for doing that and discovering new works that need to be heard and seen. And what draws you now, just not what the company is drawn to a new work? What draws you to a piece? Is there something that sparks you?
I mean, there's all sorts of things. I always struggle when people ask me, "What's your favorite? What's the thing?" Yeah. I love theatricality. I love being taken away. I love that the tingle factor, the goosebump factor, when something entertains me, moves me. So it really it depends. I know as a young person just how magical, and not even as a young person, now when I go see something that I blows my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to transport people. So that's always my goal in my work. I I tend to like a combination of something that's familiar and brand new that comes together, like reinventing, taking something and shifting it a little bit, turning it on its head.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really appreciate every aspect of the arts. I really do, and can find pretty much find beauty in anything. It's interesting. I'm a voter for one of the awards here in New York, so I go see a lot of theater when they're. And sometimes it's like I see theater like 5 times a week, and it can be tedious. And there's a lot of not so great stuff out there. Yeah. But even with the not so great stuff, I really have an appreciation for what the team was trying to do. Like, I think that's sort of one of the gifts of mine. I'm able to sort of see like, oh, okay, this doesn't work, but this is what they're going for. And, you know, I really appreciate that. And I actually learn from it, you know.
Even the shows that have problems and are not great, there's always something in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can see, because we're all trying, whether we succeed or fail, we're all moving forward and trying stuff. So let me ask then, what was the last show that you saw that gave you that tingle? That
A Strange Loop, which won the Pulitzer, Michael R. Jackson. It was thrilling. I mean, and it was so smart and so edgy, and I couldn't believe Playwrights was producing it. I was so happy they took that risk. I was so titillated that it was something that I think made a lot of audiences uncomfortable. I'm so glad it got the recognition it did. And I think that was the last thing that I was sort of blown away by. And yeah, I mean, I felt like it was shifting the business in a different direction. I don't know whether you got to see it or listen to it.
No, I haven't been New York since
October
of 2019, I guess.
Yeah,
so.
It's another great album, though. I think that was probably the last thing that I was sort of like, wow.
Yeah, it's on my purchase list. My credit card hates me when I add things. So it isn't in my repertoire yet because the money has to come rolling in still.
And I would say the other show before that made me feel that was Here Lies Love at the Public, which was, again, a completely unique experience, theatrically great storytelling. I don't know, there was those two shows in musical theater land are ones that sort of really stand out to me as innovative, cool. They feel like to me, both of those feel like an Oklahoma or a West Side Story, or that sort of is shifting where we're going in the business.
Yeah, that show we do play. I know that. Yeah. So with your theater company, with the pandemic and everything, you must have had to obviously figure things out. What have you been doing with
like everyone else, every day is a new adventure. You know, I'm such a live theater person that at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like very stubborn, arms crossed, like I'm just going to wait it out and we're not going to do any of this virtual crap. Thank God I have so many wonderful young people in my company who are like, you know what, maybe we should try this virtual thing. Maybe we should, you know, just start experimenting. Up to a year later, apparently we're go-to people for how virtual theater is done. We produce like 7 events, all sorts of stuff. The first thing we started doing was I started hosting my own show. Who knew during a pandemic I would be a talk show host where I interview industry professionals in a little happy hour and people of color. You know, I've had some great people. I got to interview Chita Rivera and Lea Salonga, and you know, it's been totally fun that thing. We've done like 40 episodes over the past year. But then we started doing things like we have a 24-hour virtual play musical festival. We produced a version of the telephone hour, but Zoom with all Broadway people as a fundraiser. It's really great. You should check it out. It's really fun. And then we started commissioning writers, because part of it was trying to employ people at this time. And I think, when we were shifting into this world of virtual theater, I think we were observing that people were trying to take existing material and adapt it for these boxes. And for the most part, I felt it was sort of unsuccessful. And when we realized we were going to be stuck here for a while, I was like, we need to be writing for this medium. We need to embrace that we are separated, embrace that we're in this boxes, and write specifically for where we are now. So the first thing we did was we did something called the Days of Recreation, where we commissioned 7 writers to write 7 10-minute plays based on the creation myth from the Bible, but based in today, but surrounding the pandemic. And they wrote, and we did that. B.D. Wong was one of the writers of that, which was so exciting. And then we ended up partnering with Emerson Stage in Boston. And right now we're partnering with Marymount College, and they commissioned us to write original musicals. Right now I'm working on something called Hindsight's 2020, and we have 21 writers writing 12 mini musicals for each month of 2020 that's going to premiere. So I'm in the thick of that right now. So we've been doing cool stuff like that is very of the moment, for the moment, and just trying to keep it going and trying to stay creative and employ artists. And we really don't know what's going to happen or when we'll be back, but in the meantime, it's been a very rich time, even though very frustrating at times. But I feel like artists are so resilient, and like cockroaches, we'll always be here. We'll always power it out.
Well, and we were talking about it just before we started the interview, that we had to learn skills that we've been forced to learn, skills that we never thought we would need or want. But all of a sudden, now it's opened up an entire world. And like you said, you put on all these virtual events. And what for you particularly, what's new skill set did you not think you'd ever need or learn? And then all of a sudden, you got it now.
Well, I don't know whether I have it yet. I still feel like I'm figuring it out. I know how to place a ring light, and I know how to adjust my volume on my my microphone. No. I definitely. What's interesting is, and I also teach. I'm the head of musical theater at the Stella Adler Studio of Acting, and so I deal with a lot of young, up and coming performers. And it's teaching over Zoom. Is its own thing, but we've all had to learn camera technique. We've all had to learn angles and lighting, and so I think everyone's going to be prepared for a career in TV and film after this. I never really wanted to do that, but I'm like, oh, I guess this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I think just the innovation, I think, is really interesting. Making art out of nothing, and and the musical theater part of it is the biggest challenge. I mean, that's the most frustrating thing. Just there's no really live singing, unless it's a solo. So we're still figuring that out.
If when we figure it out, because we will, because we got so many people working on it, that we'll figure out a way to have 9 of us singing at the exact same time. So that'll be exciting times. Of course, now you'll have to deal with actors in the next year going, okay, could you do a little bit bigger? We're not on virtual stage anymore.
Exactly.
Could you get a little bit more? So.
Exactly. But I do think it's interesting. I do think I talked to everyone. I do think the virtual world is here to stay, because people realize they can actually do stuff and save money. I do think open calls will always now be taped. I think only callbacks will be in person, because it just is a more efficient way to do it. So I'm always encouraging actors to really hone their skills and be like, okay, figure out what good lighting is, figure out your sound, figure out what makes, and what's great is if it's pre-taped, you can do it a million times so you have a great take. So.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Dev, thank you so much for coming on today and telling us a little bit about yourself and your incredible theater company. What's the theater company's website so people can learn more?
First, thank you for having me on. It's liveandincolor.org. And you can also follow us on all the social media platforms. Check us out. We have so much stuff going on, and such great writers and artists and new pieces coming out. And I'm so happy to connect with a fellow Canadian, and
Nice.
um,
Well, I
thank
do
you
have
for
to.
what you're doing.
Oh, no problem. I do have to let everybody know it's color American spelling,
Yes,
not Canadian. There's no U. So
yes,
just when you're looking it up.
the American spelling. I've converted, even though I'm a Canadian.
I totally understand. I still make that mistake when I'm typing it. I'm like, when I'm putting in things like you're like, oh, there's no U. I got to pull out the U. But before we go, Dev, I always ask 3 questions of my guests. There's no right or wrong answers, but the last answer will reveal a little bit about yourself.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah, it's not difficult. It's not like it's not a hard test. Okay, question number 1. What creator or team within musical theater has had a great influence on you? You know, this could be a composer, lyricist, director, producer, actor, stage manager even. They can be famous, not famous, like a teacher or something like that. Who in the musical theater world has had an influence on who you are?
Well, can I only pick one? Well, I'm gonna there are 3 that I always turn to.
Go for
it. That as creators, and they, it's Jerome Robbins, Bob Fosse, and Michael Bennett. Those 3 are the, in my world, like what they created, I try and emulate. Do you know what I mean? I'm a big fan of the Director-Choreographer, the single vision. There's something that's, even though perhaps they have a reputation of being challenging people or tyrants or whatever, I really respect their work, because it truly, all their stuff was so groundbreaking and shifted musical theater. And for me, what's exciting about musical theater, as I said at the beginning, is all the elements coming together: the singing, the dancing, the music, the set, the costumes, all. Yeah. And that's really what they did.
Can't go wrong with any of those answers, so correct it. Good job for question number 1. Question number 2, which kind of leads into it. Dancing, acting, or singing? Which one gave you the most fits and starts and was the most difficult for you?
Gave me what was the most difficult, or what gave me?
What gave you the most trying? What was, wasn't your skill set? What was at the bottom of the 3? What was the hardest one for you?
Well, what's interesting, I didn't know I could sing. I was always nervous about singing. I really and I knew I sang, and I obviously got into a Broadway musical, several. But it actually wasn't until I auditioned for Miss Saigon, where they were like, "Hey, can you understand?" I was in the chorus, but they're like, "Can you understudy Tui?" Which is the crazy, just high B flat, and I was like, "I don't know," and I ended up changing voice teachers, and I had this amazing voice teacher named Harry Garland, who was also Bette Midler's teacher and Blondie's teacher, and and in one lesson, he changed my voice. In one lesson, he was like, "You can do this," and then I was like, "Oh, I actually know what." It's the first time I was like, "Oh, I'm a singer too." Yeah. So that was the hardest journey for me, just in terms of getting there.
Nice. Correct answer. There's no wrong answer. But correct answer, question number 2. Question number 3, the one that's going to reveal who you are. Food in the theater or cell phones in the theater? Which is worse?
Oh, God. Oh. They're both awful. Both things are sacrilegious, but I guess cell phones. I guess cell phones, because I'd rather people be eating a meal and enjoying what's on stage than being distracted by, they're both awful.
Correct answer. They are both awful. That was the correct answer. I know. Oh, yeah. They are the bane of our existence. But at least in the virtual world, we don't care anymore. Right? So
yeah.
Eat and drink. Get it out of your system now, people, because once we go back. So.
Yes.
Well, Dev, thank you so much for coming on and telling us a little bit about everything, and answering my questions and all that fun stuff. And congratulations on what you're doing and all the shows you did, Zanna Don't, especially for me, and your theater company. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure connecting with you, and hope we can do it again someday.
For sure. All right. Well, we were just speaking with Janki here on Be Our Guest on Musical Theater Radio. Tune in next week as we'll have another guest or guests who tell us about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I'm your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanov. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.